Greetings YouTube! This is Toy Customizer Wakeangel2K1 bringing you a review of the Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad Servo figure. Yes, I had this figure since I was 9 years old and the show was still on TV. Given my current age, that makes this toy, man, I don't even want to think about it. It's 17 years old, and you know, I took a lot of pride in not breaking any of my toys when I was a little kid. So aside from a few minor scratches, like where the tabs and action features are usually applied, like on the shoulders and his head crest, a little bit on the back, I've managed to keep him in excellent shape. And you're looking at his crotch. I'm going to get it out right now. Servo is obviously an homage to Ultraman, and I found from TJ Omega's review of the show that the stock footage that the show used from Japan was actually made by the same team that created Ultraman, so that's probably why there's a resemblance. Let's take a quick look to see what Servo looks like next to Ultraman. Okay, the resemblance is quite striking, isn't it? Okay, so here is Servo. His articulation. There is no waist joint. However, for 1994, there's far more articulation you'd ever expect to see in an action figure. For example, he has a head swivel. It only goes about this far, but that seems realistic if you're a guy wearing armor. He has fully universal shoulders. That's something that wasn't too common a sight on action figures back in the early to mid-90s. He has an elbow joint with a bicep swivel, and he has a wrist swivel as well. If it seems that I'm having a little bit of a hard time moving him around, that's because his joints are very tight. You always worry that your action figures are going to get all loose and floppy over the years, but this guy, he's only gotten stronger. And I have not damaged the toy in any way. His chest decals are painted on, and I'm amazed that I managed to keep it going this long without scratching them. Got a little bit of scratch in the silver, but the blue parts are not damaged. Other parts of him, like the shin guards, are stickers. Stickers which, against all odds, I have managed to maintain. But now I'm just bragging about how awesome I am at keeping my toys from breaking. Okay, so he has accessories. Let's start with the wrist gauntlet thing. On the show, he would point his wrist guard like this, and a laser would shoot out of it, which would destroy the Megavirus monsters. And here it is, by nature of the toy's play options, which I will demonstrate later, it's removable. And not really too much to look at on its own. It's completely unpainted. I really wonder why they didn't bother to at least pick out a little bit of the blue parts. If you're wondering why I never customized it, it's because I didn't do that when I was 9. I mean, even if I wanted to, it probably would have come out looking like crap. And I did want to. Now, Servo comes with a pile of little accessories besides the gauntlet thingy, which manifests in armaments. The first two would be the Sync Sword and the Synchro's deflector shield and his Syber sword, which again, though very well sculpted, are unpainted. And this is where the biggest amount of damage to the toy happened when my dog, as a puppy, got his hand on the shield and he gnawed on it a little bit, leaving some tooth-shaped stress marks. But other than that, the accessories are still pretty much intact. So how do they work? He has pegs in his hands, the sword goes in there, the shield goes in there. I don't know, the shield besides being unpainted, it really looks ridiculously undersized. The sword looks okay. The sword is a decent length for the size of the figure. And it kind of looks okay in there, but I almost never use this set of accessories just because of the way that shield looked. And besides, he comes with something which is far more badass. Oh, by the way, the shield is made of 2 pieces. The handle clips out, you know, some assembly required. But that's not really a play feature, that's just to prevent it from breaking in the box while it's in the store. Anyway, awesomest weapon that Servo wields is the Sync Sword. To give you an idea of how long this is, here is the original sword. The blade is about the same length, but if you see the handle, it kind of ends way before. Basically, the Sync Sword is the Syber sword with a big badass guard at the bottom. It's, as you can see, it's, the implication is supposed to be that the shield has dismantled itself and made itself into the guard at the base of the sword. And this sword has a second mode called the Sync Short Blade. If you're wondering why you have that, it is because in this mode, the sword becomes essentially a battle axe. And if it were painted, it would be way more impressive, but this thing is just like a freaking death hatchet. On the TV show, Servo would just fling this thing through the air, and it would go flying through with the blade pointed slightly forward. The blade would penetrate the monster and it will shoot right through his gut, and then will fly back like a boomerang to his hands, so it can make a cool pose as the Megavirus monster exploded. You know, I showed you the articulation of his arms, but he has really good articulation in his legs too. His hips have some ability to separate from each other. That is actually more to accommodate his transformation into synchro than anything else. He has, again, really tight and squeaky joints here. He has a thigh swivel, which, again, not very commonly seen in action figures in the 90s. And a good knee bend. Takes him about 90 degrees. And he has ankle rockers. Well, tilt. Rockers would be inward tilt. This is just forward and back. So yeah, like, there's no waist joint, but when you consider the era that he's from, this is actually a pretty top-tier action figure. He's how tall is he? He's 9 inches tall, yeah. 9-inch figure. Let's see. If I were to put him next to a modern figure analog, let's come up with the Collect and Connect Stell. As you can see, they're almost exactly the same height, and Stell has much better articulation, but he's also only like 2 years old compared to Servo, who is, you know, 17. Don't worry, Servo, you're pretty good for your era. Of course, there are variant figures. The problem with Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad is that you really could only make toys of 3 of the characters. There was Servo himself, and then his 2 support units, Drago and Xenon. And since they didn't make Kilocon or any of the Megavirus monsters as toys, at least not in American distribution, that kind of left the line a little bit anemic. So to extend the line, they had the friend characters. This is Amp. And I stand up next to Stell just to show off how green he is. He's basically a remold of Servo. Complete remold, identical in just about every way. The only difference being the color of his plastic is green rather than red. Amp was like one of Sam's friends, and they just had a whole bunch of Servo recolors. Difference is that he doesn't have a head crest. That's one difference. Plus, they have a couple of Tampo stickers, and not sure if you can read that. There's one there that it says caution, then really tiny text that I can't read because it's it's blurred by how tiny it's printed. And on the other side, he has a skull head. You know, because Servo and his friends were in a rock band, and you know, rock bands like skulls. So yeah, Amp. There was one episode of the TV series where Amp transformed into Servo because Sam wasn't there, but in that episode he was still red. He didn't have a unique color palette, mostly because it was stock footage and not something that happened in the original show. But still, it seemed kind of like just a cheap cash-in, kind of a way to desperately keep the toy line relevant. He has the same accessories. They are cast in green and otherwise unpainted. So, yeah, I mean, I managed to keep this guy in better condition because I almost never played with him. Although, in a weird thing, although I never scratched any of his paint apps, the shin stickers are peeling. They aren't peeling on my Servo, despite the fact that he's the one I played with more. But this is the guy I chose to keep mostly mint in box, and he's peeling. Isn't the world just like sucky? You can never have nice things. Alright, so that is my review of the Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad Servo and his friend Amp in green Servo. Oh, yeah, he also has some nice early 90s light piping going. Like when you shine a light into his face, it kind of makes his eyes glow. Like the light goes in through his forehead and comes back out. But I don't know. It looks a lot nicer in person than it does. If you're playing with the toy in a well lit room, you'll know what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's yeah. Now with early 90s light piping out of the way, I'm basically done talking about the Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad Servo figure. As you know, as big as he is and as nice as his articulation was for the day, there really isn't too much to him. But you gotta remember that this was basically a Power Ranger imitating show, so there's more on the horizon. But I'll see you in the next video.